Call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right. As my first and only order of business, I get to call for nominations for a board chair for the 2019
I
cycle.
nominate Teresa Walter.
I'll second that.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion?
I think that this is her third term, so she deserves it.
But do we deserve it? Kidding, Teresa.
I move nomination cease.
All right. All in favor of appointing Ms. Walter as the chairman for 2019?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. We will proceed to the nomination of a vice chair.
I'll nominate Eric Johnson as vice chair.
I'll
Good
s-
learning.
I'll second that.
Motion seconded. Any discussion?
Well, I'll do my thing again. I'll move nomination cease.
All right. Ceased. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Motion passes, and with that, I will turn the floor over to Ms. Walter. Over to you, Chairman.
All right.
Would you like the gavel?
Pass that down ceremoniously.
Just in case, huh? Okay, I think the first thing is to approve the agenda. We need a motion.
I would move to approve the agenda. Well, I have a question. If I'd like something removed from the consent agenda, does that have to be done as an agenda, whatever change, or when we get to that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
no,
you
we could do it.
can do it now, it's fine.
Could do it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would move or removing the approval of the health educator position at this time. As a member of the Personnel Committee, I really haven't had any real information, or at least not to the point that I am comfortable. So I would like to review that before approving it.
Okay.
Sounds good. I don't think we need a motion to that effect. I think we'll just remove that bullet
Just
point
move it.
for more information.
Okay.
I'll second that motion to approve.
All in favor?
Now, excuse me, which one is that now?
The health educator, the second bullet.
Audrey?
There we go. I hadn't been able to find those two words, so yeah, thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes.
No.
Okay, we need a motion to
Move it.
approve the agenda with that, correction.
I move agenda approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is to approve the minutes from last week.
I make a motion we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment, is there anybody from the audience that would like to address the board with any comments? Okay, we'll move on with the consent agenda then. These items are considered routine, but we do need to go through them, so administrator actions, approve the hire, maybe Jeff, would you like to present the consent agenda?
Sure. Okay. First one is approving the hire of Kathy Saras as a probationary case aide, B22 at step 4, conditioned upon her successful completion of a background check effective the 14th of January. We've tabled the health educator, and the third one is approving the increase of Nikki Folsom's full-time equivalent from 0.9 to to a 1.0 FTE effective January 9th, 2018, for a period not to exceed 6 months. This is a temporary change to amounts to about 4 hours a period to cover the gap that we have for manpower, and then we will readdress that when it's no longer needed. And then you've got the claims for human services and license center disbursements. And in your info package coming through, there's a couple of letters, food and beverage report addressing compliance for the new La Crescent Area Event Center, and then it may spark some discussion later, the letter from the City of La Crescent concerning residential market adjustments. So 3 and 4 are info only, they will nothing to approve there.
I think that we wanted to have some discussion on that City of La Crescent. Should we move that down to,
I think you just open that up for discussion later.
okay, that's what we'll do. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda with
So-
those,
So move.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, Fred? Teresa, do you have Fred pass the packets?
The claims are all underneath.
Used to being on the receiving end, not the initiating end.
Exactly. We'll move on to the action items. Approve conditional use permit for Earl and Nancy Emmerich, that was in our board packet.
I'm somewhat familiar with this because it's in it is in my township, and from what I understand, it's just a little building, nothing fancy, so.
Was this an interim or a regular conditional use?
Regular conditional use.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't
And I'm on the planning commission, and it's really a very sensible, reasonable, logical thing in the view of that group. It was passed unanimously with almost no questions.
I make a motion, we approve it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we also have to approve the annual minimum salary for officials elected in 2019. And that's a state statute, right?
It's a state statute requirement. This board has traditionally set that at a $5,000 minimum per position, just to have it, the statute met.
So it goes in the minutes. So we need a motion.
I'd move to approve the annual minimum salary for elected officials in 2019.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to bring up something afterwards, we could vote on this, but
Okay,
pertaining to this matter.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Maybe this would be a good
Yep.
time, Eric, to
Yep.
bring up what you want to discuss.
I would like to ask the board to pass a resolution on my commissioner's salary. It's $19,016.34. I would like to reduce it to $7,200. And my reasons for that has been because since the hire of the county administrator, I feel that our costs to oversee the county has doubled. And it partially reflected that in the 2019 budget. And because of the increase of the levy, we also had to dip into the reserves for $422,000, which we cannot keep doing. But in saying all this, I fully support Jeff and what he's doing here. I'm confident and hopeful that he will find the savings in the county and get our financial condition in order, and also at the same time improve morale of the county employees. But I understand there's a little confusion if this is possible, but I've passed out statutes to you here, and At the bottom there on paragraph B, it says a resolution adopted by the county board to decrease commissioner salaries or per diem payments may take effect at any time. So I know it's been set back here in December, but the way it reads here, it can't be done, but I feel that it's important for me to do for my constituents to take a reduction in my salary. And it's up for discussion.
How does it read there again?
Right here. This is the first part is the fixed county board. I mean, like you approved it here in
Would you like to?
2019.
Yeah, our understanding through the auditors was that we cannot change, but the way the statute reads, it does provide for it.
375.055
Correct.
county commissioner compensations.
Yep.
Subdivision 1B is what he's referring to.
What I'd suggest then is that we table this for now. I will discuss with the county attorney, and I will also call AMC and get some advice on the way the statute reads, because our initial understanding through the auditors was that the salary would have to stay the same, and you'd have to return the money.
Right.
And in which
Which I could do.
which
if it-
is doable,
Yep,
but
yep.
then it sticks you paying taxes on money that you're not receiving. So we'll find out the right way to do this
I'm fine with
and
that.
provide that opportunity,
Yep.
and then we can hopefully have it ready for the next meeting.
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna table that discussion item till the next meeting then. Okay, the third item is to adopt resolution 1901, to use the alternative method to disseminate bids and requests. And I believe that's a routine thing that we usually do anyway, isn't it? I know highway has always done it that way. So we must need a motion to make it official.
Yes.
All right. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 19-1 to use alternative method to disseminate bids and requests.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 4, adopt resolution 1902 to authorize professional association memberships and defray the expenses. This also is routine business each year. But we need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Number 5, adopt resolution 1903 to appoint county medical examiner.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Number 6, approve 2019 appropriations, and we got our updated list from our administrator with the corrected amounts all here. So we need a motion to approve officially the appropriations which are already in the budget.
So are we going to,
You may address that, yeah, I'd motion first, and then you can discuss.
I got a call from Dave Walters concerning the 14,400 appropriation. And it was supposed to have been done last month, but for some reason it was not, so I don't know where you guys sit on that, but he needs to know by the 15th of January in order to get matching funds from the state on that.
My understanding from last year is that we approved that amount simply because that state funding had already been applied for, and then there would have been
And it was matched.
it's a matching thing, and so we just kind of held up our end of it. But and quite frankly, there was some discomfort about that, and we debated a little bit at the time whether we should do it or not. And from having served on the Water Resources Board here, I question if that is really needed that much there. And the thing that was to fund originally was the feedlot work that they were doing for us. And we're doing that now. We took that back. So, in effect, if we give that 14.4, we're paying double for that. At least that's my interpretation of what's going on.
Did it also include their work on the buffer zones?
No.
Okay. Does the buffer
That's a
zone-
separate $10,000 item.
Okay, and that goes to the county, to the zoning, under zoning budget?
That's a separate,
That's separate.
that was a $50,000,
Yeah,
and that was, from what I understand, just put in general fund,
yes,
but it was used to hire Amelia, I believe,
right.
or whatever.
Okay.
In any event, it's not related to the 14 directly.
But doesn't Soil and Water still help with feedlot issues as far as consulting and?
I think they do, but we're getting the money.
Well, the situation, I think, is more, I'm not sure. I think the situation is more the enforcement end of it that we are doing, and they're doing the background, and they basically are required to do that background anyway.
Right.
They're not doing any more. They're not doing anything in addition for us that they wouldn't have to do otherwise, is my understanding of it.
What was the reason for taking that away from Soil and Water and bringing it in-house? Was there reasons behind that, or?
Well, we've got the feedlot officer. When we were, I think, basically understaffed in that area, it was very useful to have that done there. But
Well, and I
We've
think
got
because
staff.
we're the enforcement agency to begin with, so
Yeah.
we should be on top of what we're enforcing.
yeah, there was a bit of a disconnect there, and by bringing that back, we attempted to remedy that disconnect.
Actually, our appropriations that we got the handout for doesn't include it for 2019.
I looked at that and I didn't see it, and I thought, well,
At the bottom.
why are we talking about this now?
Because Dave contacted us about considering it
Okay,
again.
okay.
So do we
Yeah,
want to consider it or
I,
not?
I got an email from Jeff on that, and my response was that I didn't think that we should be doing it. And I guess I still feel that way.
So we need a motion to approve the
I would move-
appropriations without
Yeah,
it.
I would move to approve it as presented
Without the 14.4?
without the 14.4.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we just approved our appropriations officially. Okay, approve the 2018 budget amendments, and Carol, do you need to present that, or can we just,
If you had any questions as to what it was, but it really has to do with, if it's a revenue item, it was that we got more money than what we had originally budgeted. Expenditures are things that the board has discussed throughout the year, like having to do with the furnace for the recycling center that they didn't have budgeted, and you had said you would take it out of the,
Okay.
project's money. You know, so they're basically all things that have been addressed, including the salaries, and it's just to
make
make
it
sure
official.
that our final budget reflects what you had approved throughout the year.
So we're looking for a motion to approve the stated budget amendments.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, then the last item here is approve the 2019 committee appointments.
We missed,
No,
you
no.
missed
No,
number 8.
board
Board board meeting schedule?
Oh,
Did they-
board meeting schedule, sorry about that, checked off the wrong one here.
We do the middle of
Okay,
November?
Jeff has presented a board meeting schedule.
Okay. Okay.
With having two official board meetings each month, the first and third Tuesday mornings, and starting at 9:30. And then he did put in some suggestions for strategic planning or policy review meetings in between. I'm thinking that we should probably approve the board meeting schedule for the first and third, and set up our policy meetings and
Workshop meetings.
workshop meetings,
Have it flexible.
have it flexible. We can decide at each meeting, do we want one next week
Yeah.
or not?
The schedule as I built it originally, has the full board meetings bolded. Those would be locked in set unless there's a reason to change it down the road. The work group sessions are just that we would that what was on the schedule was kind of a rough proposal as we go through the year, and then we would refine that as we define a meeting requirement. And we just have to make sure we do that in far enough advance to keep current with all the open meeting rules and such.
And we should do that, because Fred's already on the new schedule.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, we need a motion to approve the regular board meetings.
I make a motion that we approve the regular board meetings and keep the workshop flexible.
All we'd have to do in order to keep it flexible is make sure we give proper notice
Right.
Correct.
to the public, correct?
Yeah.
And as long as we're going to decide that 7 days ahead,
Right.
and that's plenty of time.
Yes.
So,
I will officially publish it with just the full meetings, and then we will announce the workshop meetings separately, or we'll post them when we have them scheduled. But the schedule will be just the full board meetings.
you could put a note in the notice that this is what's going to happen, so that people are aware of it and look for it, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or add it to as an agenda item for consideration for the next week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would work too. Sure it would.
Did we have a second on that? Not yet. Not yet.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. And then the last,
If I could, I'd like to make a comment. I'm not going to make the next meeting. I'm going to be gone. So that's when we're going to discuss Eric's question on compensation.
We could probably address it right now. The statute that you're referring to doesn't allow for individual adjustment of commissioners' compensation. If you look at the commissioners, the way it's written, it's possessive after the plural.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not to set yours different than theirs, because that would actually promote abuse probably of this, system if we were able to do that.
So
that's why
we'd either have to adopt as
All of you.
all of us or none of
Or
us.
not. Yes, so,
Well, I guess that would be up for discussion on whether we all want to do that. If we all did it, we would save the county $59,000, but, that would be, give Jeff a head start on saving the county some money.
I would just weigh in that I have stated on more than one occasion that I didn't choose to do this based on what the pay was. However, around the area, we presently are one of the lowest paid counties as far as commissioners are concerned. And I personally would just point out that based on my education, past government experience, private business ownership and so forth, I'd be more than happy to be paid as a consultant rather than a commissioner. And I think that would be considerably more than what I'm getting paid as a commissioner. So I appreciate, I mean, I know Eric ran his campaign based on his commitment to taking less. I didn't, and I would choose not to take less at this point.
My only comment would be that when you do a job, you should probably sort of have in mind what your time is actually worth. And I've tried to keep track of the amount of time that I spend on this particular job, and I paid particular attention to that over the last few months. Maybe the situation will change over this next year, but at this point, this particular job probably nets me somewhere in the general vicinity of $15 to $17 an hour if I've got my hours straight and my numbers straight. And I do not include in those figures any time that I spend in a meeting for which I am reimbursed on a per diem, and I don't include in those figures any of my driving time back and forth to those meetings. It's purely time that I spend on board business that's not compensated any other way, and of course I don't include these meetings. So that's where I'm at right now by my figures, is somewhere between $15 and $17 an hour. To drop it that much, yeah, like Jack, I didn't run for the job based on how much it paid, but I still think there has to be at least a little bit of logic as far as the amount of time spent and the value of that time.
I do agree with Fred on that. I know I too spend a lot of times in order to come to a meeting prepared. You do have to do a lot of reviewing, a lot of checking on things before the meetings themselves. So I think we should leave it the same at this time and maybe readdress the situation next December.
And I would add too that in no way am I disparaging Eric's noble gesture. I appreciate that his feeling as he does, but again, I would we haven't, at least every year I've been on the commission, we've never raised either, and so I think we have been responsible in that manner. And as far as Jeff is concerned, we were one of the very few counties in the state without a coordinator or administrator, and the addition, I think, will prove to be a positive whether we reduce our pay or not. So.
Well, like I said, this is not about a debate whether it was a good to hire Jeff or not. I can see the pros and cons of both sides of that. So And like I said, I fully support Jeff and what he's gonna try to do for us, and I understand all your points. And believe me, I know there's gonna be a lot of time and work in this job. Maybe it's because I'm a farmer by trade, so I'm used to not making a whole lot of money, so.
I hear you. I hear you.
I had my reasons for doing it, and like I say, I'd like to stick to it, but if that's the case, it has to stay the same, you know, I'd be willing to pay it back, so. We can always, like you said, come back and look at it again and address it at a later date. And I'll make it work one way or the other.
Okay.
We don't have any motion on the floor or anything.
No.
I don't think so.
We
No,
just
we're not
decide.
changing
No,
anything.
no, that was
Oh.
just, right.
Okay,
So now we can move on to committee appointments.
I've got a suggestion that, given the fact that District 3, I believe, hasn't been decided yet, it'll be in February 12th, I believe. To make things a little simpler, what would it be? Would it be okay if I would just take on Justin's committee roles, and then when District 3 is decided, we could battle it out then as far as committee assignments?
That makes sense, because we just went through that in August when we lost Commissioner Connor. Then we wouldn't have to do it twice if Eric took over all of Justin's committees. Would he? I think we have to go through them just so that they're on record, who's on these committees. But, do you wanna start with the idea of Eric taking over Justin's committees before we move on?
It was just
Okay.
to make it simpler.
Yeah.
And
Appreciate that. If we can just flip through them quickly, and we can assume that, unless
And then
unless
in
anybody wants to
February,
change.
Redo it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that, to me, that makes sense, because there's, like you said, there's really no point in going through it second time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I've just shared a couple copies for you. I'm trying to reorganize it a little bit. The committees were on the document originally kind of all over the place. So I've tried to organize the in-house committees first, and then places where the commissioners represent Alton County. So
Now, I have one question, and I emailed this to Jeff, and I can't remember whether I hit the button that sent it to all board members or not, but there are some places that I felt, couldn't we get by with one board member, or maybe a board member and alternate, instead of having two board members on a particular committee? And do you have that list?
we can address that as we go through.
Yeah,
I'll
as
have
we
to-
go through.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The only one I know that we can't, we're supposed to have two is the extension committee.
Okay.
That's by
Right.
Now-
state statute.
I have one quick question on that, thank you. When is the first extension committee meeting?
February.
It's in February,
First Thursday
in
of
February.
and that is, the problem is, as it's presently constituted, that, yeah,
Fourth.
okay, that would be, the extension committee meeting would be on the 6th of February.
Okay.
Do we have a meeting scheduled on the 5th of February? Or don't we
the
have it?
fourth. We have one on the fourth, right?
No, no, the 4th is Monday.
Okay, then we have extension Thursday.
Extension, that's right,
Yeah,
7th.
Tuesdays.
I'm sorry. Do we have a
We'll
meeting
have a
scheduled
meeting, yes.
on the 5th?
Yes.
It isn't the 12th, it's the 5th.
No, it's the meeting is the 12th.
So,
The
okay.
first meeting of February.
Then we have to work it out, because as it's presently constituted, the three of us are all on the extension committee. Eric is,
No, I was on extension committee as a private, as success, well, I don't know, now that I'm on a
Did you
commissioner.
find
Yeah.
a person to take your place, or don't you know?
I've been through 4 people so far. So
Well-
I'm still working on that,
Okay. But then you,
but I will hopefully be successful in finding a replacement for my spot on that.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
But are we
Okay.
meeting the first and third Tuesdays of each month?
No, it looks like the second and third, isn't it, the way it's set up? Or second and fourth, sorry.
Second and fourth. So then,
What was our motion?
Yeah, second and fourth.
And so
Well.
you feel that there's a, what,
You
well,
could
the
not
problem, the
do it.
problem would be, you would have 3 commissioners at a meeting.
well,
And
no,
so that-
technically I won't be because I was on extension as a,
Yeah, but you're a
Private citizen.
commissioner now.
right, but I'm not appointed as a commissioner to be on
No.
extension.
Yeah, but we can't have
It's-
3 of us at the same.
No, so
No.
you would have to appoint somebody else, right?
Either, well, we would either have to, somebody not show up.
Well, that
One
could
one of
be-
the 3 of us would just simply not show up for that meeting,
that could be arranged, yeah.
just so we're aware of it. Just
Well,
so-
right now, it was you and Teresa.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And if we continue the present thing, well then,
Well,
but
when
you would be there anyway because of your
No.
prior.
No, because I resigned, so I'm not.
Okay, you have resigned
I
from the
have
extension.
resigned from, yep.
Okay, I
Yep,
didn't
no,
know
I'm not
that.
still on. I resigned as
Okay.
of the last meeting, so.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
So that would be.
So it would be,
Then
still
I'm
be
good.
fine, yep.
Then I'm good.
Yep.
Yep. Very good, thank you.
Before we move on, when we made our meeting schedule, was the motion, what did the motion state?
So I had first and third.
Okay, but on the schedule itself, we have second and fourth. So-
Right, so we
Yeah,
we
so
have
we-
to change that?
That's why I had typed first and third.
Did I
Okay.
make that motion? First and third?
Oh, boy.
Yep.
Okay.
I apologize. That's- I missed that.
Well, I'll rescind my motion and make it the second and fourth Tuesdays.
Okay.
Would that be better?
Perfect.
Can I make that a motion?
Okay,
I'll second it.
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, we need to correct in the minutes. Okay,
Sorry about that, I
second-
missed that.
That's right.
Second and fourth, okay.
Okay. So on the committees then, if we can just flip through here real quickly to make sure I've got things captured right. For under our standing committees, Human Services, we have Commissioners Miller and Zmuski, so I will replace that with
Eric,
Johnson there. And our Land Use Public Works Committee, we have Commissioners Walter and Arnold. We'll reset the dates on that. Finance Standing Committee would be Commissioners Johnson and Arnold.
there's always a problem with that finance committee because of the fact that, Fred is also on the land use one. And so he
Yeah.
always misses one,
Well, at this point, that was because we were at 4 people on the board.
yeah.
That's,
We'll
the
just let
spot,
that
the
sit.
spot there was, Scott's, was the
Yes.
District 3 spot.
Right,
Right,
And-
that could be fixed in
We can fix that in February.
Yep.
okay.
So
at this
just
time
let
we'll
it
vote
stand
for
for
it.
We'll
now.
let it stand as that. All right, so our negotiating committee, Personnel Committee, we're Commissioner Miller and Zmuski, so we'll change that to Johnson.
Okay.
And our ADA Committee, we will add Johnson to that one as well.
And that's one that is required that we have 2 commissioners on it for
Correct.
reimbursement for highway.
Right, yeah, there's a statutory requirement for that committee.
So that'll be
Yep.
Eric and, okay.
Got the Airport Commission we had as was our vacant with Caledonia District 3, so we will leave that vacant for now. And Canvassing Board is 2 that aren't up for election or picked at the time, so we don't need a name identified there. Child mortality stays the same, CJC stays the same. And CJCC stays the same. Highway Building Committee, we have Arnold and Miller, we'll leave that. And then Parks Committee, we will change to Mr. Johnson there in place of Justin. And
The Board of Adjustment, we had decided we didn't need an alternate.
correct.
Okay, so that's eliminated.
Yeah, I questioned that too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
5 people we don't. Okay, and you said Parks was changed, okay.
Yep.
Planning Commission,
No changes there yet. You made appointments.
and I think that vacant commissioner was considered an alternate, right? We
That's
don't-
correct.
That's an alternate, not
Okay.
not
Great.
to for that board.
So we can leave that as is for now.
Or we could put somebody on it if they want to be an alternate on Planning Commission.
That basically didn't work out that way anyway. I wound up going to all the meetings.
Okay, but we
So-
need an alternate just in case, right?
We didn't have, before Scott and I talked about it and decided we needed to do the alternate thing, and then we did it, and then it didn't work out that way anyway.
Okay,
So I would actually recommend that we just
leave it
drop,
blank.
just drop that alternate position on the planning commission, because we simply haven't used it. But
But if the-
that's up to the board.
If it need arises, you could, you know, like if somebody
Yeah.
can't make it, or it wouldn't be a bad policy to have
There's so much background information that you need to absorb
it. Yeah,
before you go into one of those meetings, that it's extremely difficult to be an alternate. And neither Scott nor I had been there before we did that, and we learned rather abruptly that it didn't work very well. So that's why I'm recommending that change based on experience, but it's still the will of the board.
Well,
I'm
I'm-
open.
I'd be willing to be an alternate. I'm pretty much up to speed on, I've been following those for quite a few years, so, if you guys don't mind,
Whatever.
if you wanna have an alternate, I'd be
Okay.
willing to do that, in case Fred can't
Just
make
in
it.
case. That's probably a good idea. So at this time, we'll put Eric as an alternate.
Okay.
and If needed.
Got it. Let's see, feedlot, we don't need. Safety committee, we're good there. All right, and so now on the external representation, for the AMC district committees, we'll go with the same policy on swapping in Mr. Johnson there. For the Environmental and National Resources Committee, our Transportation Committee would still remain with the vacant commissioner. The Human Services Committee with Commissioner Miller, General Government Committees with Mr. Arnold, and our Public Safety Committee with Ms. Walter. Okay.
So
Change to the AMC Delegate Assembly as well to match. And that's just plugging in the right names there.
So does everybody want to stay in their AMC districts as we have been, or do you want to,
Yeah, I'm fine with
you're
it.
fine with it?
Okay.
You too? Okay.
That's fine.
Then the only difference would be Eric is going to be on the, Environmental and Natural Resources. Okay.
Takes us down to the next one to address with the change would be the Bluff Country Minnesota Multi-County Housing and Development Authority. Commissioner Zmewski was on that, so we'll add Johnson unless
That's quarterly meetings,
that is quarterly meetings in
Yep.
Rushford. Yep.
that's in Rushford, I believe.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Board of Health as a joint powers committee would be Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Johnson. Actually, all of you, I'm
All
sorry,
of us
are on
are,
that.
yeah,
Yep,
yes.
sorry. So our District 3 would remain vacant. Everybody else is the same. Okay. And no change on that one. The Community Health Services State Delegate. Right now we have Commissioner Miller, and I think we no longer require an alternate on this one, correct?
Actually,
Or
we
do we do?
determined that at our joint power meeting, don't we, Jack? The shack
Yeah.
person?
I'm sorry, you're right, that's,
Yeah,
we-
and,
So, and
Rushford has
this
taken
year,
that.
I
It's
think
Fillmore
Fillmore
has-
has
and I'm
mentioned
the
you,
alternate.
and you're
Yeah.
the alternate. So, but that we decided at our public health meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this time, it's,
yeah,
we can actually just leave that one
yeah,
off
right,
for next year.
yeah,
Okay.
all right. The
Crooked Creek, We
next one with Commissioner to address is,
EDA,
Sorry.
but that's Jack and Fred, you two want to stay on EDA?
Yeah, that's fine.
okay. And so Extension Committee, Commissioner Johnson's coming off as the private member. And,
Fred and Teresa will stay if
Commissioner,
they
yep.
so choose to.
right. Okay,
And that list will be updated at our February meeting anyway, because Carrie does have an alternate already.
okay. And so down to Family Services Collaborative would remain Commissioner Walter for the General Governing Council. And, okay. no
That one,
change
we
there.
we do need an alternate, because it's required that we have a commissioner on that.
Okay.
Actually, when I was first on it, Steve was my alternate because he lived in Caledonia area, and it's always held at Caledonia.
Yeah.
But,
Right now, we've got the vacant slot identified as the alternate. So if you want
Yes.
to keep that the same, or if you want to fill somebody in for now.
the next meeting is January 24th, and I am planning on going to it, so
Okay.
you wanna leave it till
Just leave it.
February?
So we'll leave that with the vacant commissioner
And we
slot
can
then.
give that person that's in District 3 his. Okay.
Okay. The next would be Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center, Commissioner Miller.
Yeah.
And we have the vacant slot as the alternate on that. Stays the same, okay.
Same.
All right, next one to address is the One Watershed, One Plan. We had Commissioner Arnold, and we would then plug in Commissioner Johnson for that.
Let me catch up with that.
Page 17.
Now, my page 17 is different than your page
Right,
17.
I reprinted it with the
Yeah,
reorder.
So I've got,
Where he's going and what we're following is this.
Yeah, we're,
That's
We're-
why,
we're lost.
the copy I gave you to share it'd be on page 16 of
No,
that copy.
that's fine. I've
okay,
looked it all through
page
beforehand,
17.
So, right, and Fred has been on that for the water resources, that's that one.
yeah.
And Justin was your alternate.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
And I'm fine with that.
16.
You want to be an alternate?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Above that, with that EMS board, I will continue to stay on that.
okay,
I have a meeting this Thursday, so that's why we have to have that in the minutes. Okay. And the person who's on EMS also has to be on workforce development, because they coordinate their meetings, so they're on the same day in the same spot. So
Okay.
it goes from 8 to 1. But, okay, I just threw that in because we haven't got to that.
Okay.
Selco was Justin. You wanna take
I'm
that,
fine with
York?
it,
Okay. Well, I could be your alternate if you put me the Selco one.
Sure.
SEMCAC was, Justin, you wanna keep that one? Eric?
Sure.
okay.
Okay,
Teresa,
yes.
I just want to go back to the La Crosse County Solid Waste Policy Board.
Oh,
Um,
I've been on it for about
Right.
8 years.
Well, when it says notify Hank
Oh,
Koch. or-
Yeah, I noted that too,
Yeah,
that
he's retired, right?
Yeah.
he's retired a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so we need to change that.
Clean that up.
Yeah, I'm not sure who his replacement is, but,
I know it, but I don't
yeah,
have it on.
so,
Anyway,
But we can-
Jeff, note that
Yeah.
yeah.
that's
Yeah, and, we'll
incorrect name
fix that,
there,
yeah.
yeah.
Does anybody else wanna do solid waste for a change. There's a meeting, I think, February, the Wednesday, first Wednesday of February, but I will continue if nobody else wants it.
Well, let's see how it shakes out
In
in
February?
in February.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay,
we can all divvy this back up again, so.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. All right, Seven Rivers is all of you, so that stays.
which I don't think we've ever had a meeting, but I know we're supposed to all be on it, so.
Smart
And
Trails,
actually,
Miller.
under that, Emergency Communication Board, Jack's been on that. You wanna continue that, Jack?
That's fine.
Okay. But we should have an alternate, and I was your alternate, but. we never
No,
needed-
one-
I can s- I'll leave it there,
for- Just
okay.
leave it for now, sure.
Okay,
Okay.
I thought we already did this.
Yeah, I think we,
Let's see.
Didn't we do the Selco one already?
Yep,
We just
Okay.
did that.
And SEMCAC we did, okay.
that's in,
Oh, I'm,
Eric, you know, SEMCAC's in Rushford.
Yep.
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 Smart Trails, Jack, you are on that board?
Yeah, I'll stay on there
Okay.
while I still can ride my bike.
Do you ride your bike over there?
Yeah.
Township Officer Association would
I'll stay on that.
stay in that, okay?
I love Township. And I think Fred was my alternate anyway.
yep, yep.
All right. Water Planning Committee would stay Commissioner Arnold.
Yeah,
And let's see, we already addressed workforce development, and that's the list. Okay, I will print and refine it with those changes.
Right.
We can get a-
You know, the
Just
way
a-
that we received it the last few years, Jeff, has been the, kind of the short form. I don't know if you have the,
Okay, I don't have that document, but I'm sure I can track it down
okay.
and update it.
It kind of helps with a glance if you're,
Yep.
who's on what committee, so. It's a nice one to, instead of having the 18 to 22 pages or something.
Yep.
Okay,
I got 30, I got 29 pages on my stuff here. That's why,
yeah, I'm down to 25.
yeah, that's why I'm not tracking with you on this, because I got 29 pages on it, you got 23.
Yeah, I'm trying to clean it up and clean it down, so just to close that out, then a motion to approve the committees
Yeah.
with those changes.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the committee appointments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And
Just-
being 10 o'clock, we are supposed to open the sealed bids.
Yes. Yep.
Bingo.
We received 2 prior to today, at least I think that's the second one. And nobody's brought us any up from downstairs, so. There's one. Second. Figure out how to get the envelope open. All right. That appears to just be invoices, okay. Never mind, we have one. That's just invoices.
We only have one?
Yep.
Okay.
Came in at the same time, so this is a joint bid between the Spring Grove Herald and the Caledonia Argus.
Okay. 4,
Let's see, in accordance with the notice of request for the year of 2019.
That comments, do you wanna read that, those off?
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah. Official newspaper for 2019, official proceedings of the county board and all notices required to be published in the county's official paper. Charge per inch is $6.50. Miscellaneous notices, legal rate is $8.20. Display rate, $8.20. First printing of 2018 financial statement, $6.30 per inch. And publication of delinquent tax lists at $9 per inch. Submitted by the Caledonia Argus and Spring Grove Herald.
I just have a question on that. So that's a joint bid from the Caledonia Argus and the Spring Grove Herald, correct?
Correct.
So the same notice goes in both papers.
Okay. So, shouldn't that be a separate, I mean, they're not the same paper, right? So, I mean, is there a little, I'm just questioning the fact that they're two separate papers, but they have a joint bid. Is that legal? I don't know.
I think we did that last year. They worked it out between the two of them to put in one bid. I don't know why. It's kind of based on, their circulation. So maybe they combined their bid in order to get enough circulation. Carol, do you remember that, about them doing that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's been quite a few years, and it was researched
Okay.
as to whether it was legal or not.
Just a question,
Yep.
observation that I'm just wondering about, so.
Pulling up last year's minutes here just to compare. With that. 1 second.
We used to get a bid from the Houston County News, but now they don't exist in our county. Their office doesn't exist.
Their office doesn't, right?
Exist, so we could use their bid. They were quite a bit lower in their costs. The Houston County News was, but
Well, it's just like I say, it's just a question from an observer. I know it was done last, was it a couple years ago that this changed to that or whatever? but-
right.
So, I mean, if it's been researched, it's been approved, so.
So this is the way
and-
this is
and-
this this is the way it was approved last year. The fee last year was $6 per column inch. This year it's 6.5, and the financial statement printing was $6, and this year it's $6.30.
How about the miscellaneous?
And it says no bid on the miscellaneous, but
Looks like it was,
so slight increase in the rates from last year's
how
bid.
about the delinquent tax list?
The delinquent
So
$9.
tax list is $9. Last year it was $6 per column inch.
$3.
Okay.
Big difference.
I've got a question. Bob?
By having a joint bid, when they publish tax lists, when they publish county board meetings, is that in both papers, so you're getting duplicate publications?
yes.
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 You need duplicate publications?
No, but
There's-
that's how they put in their
But if
bid.
that's the only way you get the bid, I understand.
We don't need, well, I think there was
You
a
only need-
circulation problem.
Well, you only need one,
Yeah, I think that, we only need it in one paper.
right?
So I wonder if we should talk to them about that, because it's definitely only needed in one paper. So I'll find out if they can adjust that, because it did go up $3 per inch.
1 second, I have a note from Michelle here on this. Let me double check
I
that.
don't believe they're gonna reduce their rate even if you have it only in one.
Probably not.
That is their line rate, and that's why we thought it was beneficial to have it in both papers.
If you go with just one paper, one would assume it would be the Caledonian paper because that has the larger circulation. But if you do that, you are quite dramatically under-informing the western part of my district, so I get a little sensitive about that.
And if it's the same price, We might as well
Yeah.
look for a motion
Reach
to
more
accept the,
people.
But you're paying each paper the $6.50 or whatever.
no.
No, it's a combined,
It's a
Yep.
combined, they're,
That's combined.
Combined amount.
and given the fact it's the only bid we have, so.
So we need a
I'd make a
motion.
motion to approve the bid.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Committee reports. Commissioner reports.
Somewhere under this pile. There we are. Two meetings to report on. The first one would be the EDA meeting. And EDA is very aware of our situation in this county with the agricultural economy, and as I'm sure most of you are aware, economic development has not included agriculture as part of its thing basically forever. However, there are people in agriculture now who are seriously looking at, and some have done, business models that aren't directly involved with the commodity prices that are the current problem in agriculture. We've got half a dozen examples in this community, in this county, of agricultural-based businesses that have broadened their scope considerably from the commodity business and have been quite successful at it. And they've done this on their own. Now, the question becomes, and we've talked about this at EDA, and I've had 2 or 3 meetings with other people and a couple of meetings with the EDA director and the extension ag person, Mr. Cruz, about this, to try to make available to people who are caught in this commodity cycle business some knowledge and some experience and just general how do you go about broadening your base so that you can stay in business as a farming operation without having to go to part-time farming and part-time truck driving or part-time janitorial work or whatever just to survive economically. And we've been working on this for a couple of months, and the three, Mr. Cruz and Ms. Wagner and I, are going to meet with the newspaper people on the 23rd of January and explore the situation a little further as to how we might be able to publicize this and what direction we want to start moving in on this particular project. It'll be very interesting. It involves people being able to think out of the box a little bit, and the feeling is that we need to inform people of what's actually out there and what they could possibly do themselves to broaden their base. There's some criticism of this idea from the standpoint that, well, it really doesn't make any difference economically to the county. If a farmer goes out of business as a financial entity, he's going to rent that land out, and that land is still there and is still going to produce income. However, the basic economic driver me, the basic economic driver of any area is how many people are in the area. And if you go to a model where you have people living on farms, renting the land out, working in town, that does not bring the younger generation back. It does not keep the younger generation here. Those are the people that we need. The people that move into this county and build some rather nice-looking homes on the bluffs tend to be people that already have it made, and their kids are already out of the house. So I'm concerned about that. And we've got, as I said before, we've got some examples in this community of people who have broadened their base, gotten out of that economic cycle business, and who have brought family members. They've kept family members here, or they've brought family members back into the community. And some of those people are pretty productive, and we need them. So that's where we're going with this. I have no idea whether it's going to work or not. It depends on the people who are on the farms now who are having some problems with this cyclical business and want to get out of it. The other part of the problem with large commercial agriculture in this county, there's two problems. They're related. One of them is the beautiful hilly terrain that we have. And my cousin's husband, who farms in north central Iowa, where it's flat, laughs at me as a farmer because my largest field was 40 acres. His smallest field's about 160. We talk about farming here as acres. My smallest field at that point in time, when I was talking to him about this, was 1.7 acres. He couldn't even comprehend that. They talk in that area about farming quarters or sections. We can't compete with that. We can't compete with that on with large-scale farming. The other part of our problem in this county, and it's going to get to be a more severe problem in the future, is the karst geology. Current science even tells me we can't fertilize to the extent that people that don't have to deal with the karst geology, we can't fertilize to the rate that they can. Our topsoil isn't that thick, and if the plant doesn't take up those nutrients, it rains. Those nutrients go down. If you've got 6 feet of topsoil, they don't get nearly as quickly to that water. If you've just got a foot or two, they get there a little quicker. So that's the other part of the problem. Well, if you can't fertilize to the extent that your neighbors 100 miles to the west can, your yields aren't going to be as good. So there's always a trade-off between how much fertilizer is optimal and how much is too much, and I'm not going to go there this morning.
Fred?
Anyway, that's where that one is at this point. the Soil and Water Conservation meeting. I serve on 3 of those boards. I go to a One Watershed, One Plan meeting in Preston, and I go to a Southeast Minnesota meeting in Orinoco. Those things are related, and I have been asking several times just to find out whether the structure, One Watershed, One Plan, is being beneficial to us. This One Watershed, One Plan with the Root River is the first one in the state that has actually got a project completed. Well, in the judgment of the people that are the operating people on those boards, the One Watershed, One Plan thing, organizational structure, is working very, very well. Their feeling is that they are getting a lot more opportunity to do work out in the field, to get more projects on the ground and running, simply because of the financial structure that One Watershed, One Plan enables them to work with. So take a deep breath. I think that we've actually, as a government, got something done right.
Very good.
I'll come back to something else at the end, but that's my formal report.
Teresa, if I could, I'd like to just expand a bit, because I'm on the EDA also, and that's at the new director for us, whose name is
Allison Wagner.
Allison, yeah, is working very diligently with area high schools on programs to get the students to do internships, again, with the goal to have businesses get a preview of these students. The students benefit from learning the business and hopefully will someday join that business if they click. The other thing is there's a private group that is working on alternate farming methods that is forming or has formed and is beginning to solicit ideas or get information to people who have an interest in doing something else. And thirdly, to pick up on your comments on the fertilizer and so on, there's just an article in the paper about a section of Wisconsin, I'm not sure which, but 60% of the private wells were contaminated with phosphorus, whatever the harmful nitrates.
Nitrates is the big thing right now, but
It was a combination of,
there's
and that
phosphorus
study-
and potash sometimes,
Right.
yeah.
E. coli stuff, and that study was done on a private basis, from what I understand. There was 3 counties that participated in it, but it was done through a private, it wasn't through the state. But I, being a farmer, I'm a commodity farmer. I also have beef cows, and so I raise beef. And this is a sensitive subject for me. We have to be careful not to condemn our modern egg producers. I'm all for diversification. If something's comes up that it's going to work for your operation, I'm all for it. But I want to steer away from the fact that we're going to condemn a segment of the agriculture that's probably the majority, more likely, that we're poor stewards of our land, we're careless with our fertilizers, and that is not the case. Fertilizer is an expensive input, and it's something that we use sparingly to feed the crop. A lot of us do our soil samples, we do grid application, put it where it needs it. We do split applications on nitrogen. So we need to have the information out there of what the modern ag guys are doing. And there's a misconception, I feel, you know, that the modern ag guys are under attack. And we're scared of that. We're resentful of that. But this EDA thing with helping agricultural producers, I'm fine with that. I think we need to look at alternatives also. But please, let's steer away from the fact that the most of us that do farm are careless with our operations.
Nothing that I said
No, I know
should
that.
be
I
should
know
be
that.
interpreted that way at all.
It wasn't, just bring it up. 'cause-
Yeah, and I appreciate your comments too, Eric. I was focusing more on those who have failed at continuing in their present agricultural role and are looking for something else they can do
That's
and
fine,
stay on the
yeah.
land.
No
Yeah.
alternatives.
That's the purpose of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Now,
Eric
one,
hasn't had any
I
committees.
I would add one thing to that. There are several other avenues available to people to find various methods of supplementing income or changing their operations or whatever. 3 out of the last 4 farm magazines that I've read have had at least 1, and in one case 4 articles about how to broaden your financial base. So we aren't the only ones working that side of the street. It's just, it was my logic in starting to work on this that, hey, the federal government isn't doing anything to help at this point. Please don't take this as political comment. And the state government really isn't doing a whole lot to help either. Maybe some unit of government ought to kind of try to help people a little bit.
I think extension's been, state extension,
State-
university. extension,
university
really
does.
working hard on that.
Yeah.
And that too is where Mike Cruz is coming from.
Yeah, we need to advertise what they're doing a little bit better than we do, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah, and I can identify with it because I have a brother who's a dairy farmer that has had to diversify into other areas and so. I won't elaborate on that right now, what he's come up with. But it's good, all good things. Okay, anything else, Jack? I know Eric hasn't had any meetings yet.
Yeah, I had a meeting last night with Hiawatha Valley Mental Health. As I had mentioned at a previous meeting, the looking for a new director. At the meeting last night, it was disclosed that the search has come up with 3 very viable candidates, so scheduling those 3 to review their credentials, and hopefully we'll make a decision.
I didn't have any meetings per se. I did do a walk through Botcher Park.
I saw the pictures.
My member from the park committee insisted on. It's beautiful. The scouts have done just a remarkable job, and this was winter, how
Good.
nice it was. And then workforce development is trying to work with EDA on this internship program. I don't know if she brought that up. But our director for our whole region, his wife passed away suddenly on New Year's Eve, and so he's on leave until March 1st. So I have a meeting with them on Thursday this week, so I'll be able to update you a little more on their internship program. Jack, this might be a good time for your comments on the letter from the city, since that's your district.
Yes, I asked Cindy to be here. I can share the the letter. Dear County Commissioners, please be advised that the La Crescent City Council continues to question the process whereby city residential market values were adjusted between 2018 and 2019. There appears to be no consistency in the process, as market values were both raised and lowered, while very few values remained constant. For those property owners that saw their market values increase in 2019, there was the consequence of a significant property tax increase in 2019. In many instances, the percentage and dollar amount of the tax increase is staggering. So I've asked Cindy to join us here, but we haven't sent out the final tax.
Oh,
No.
no, and that won't be out until,
Maybe you want to come forward and
yes, I will.
Yeah. So to imply that,
We have the proposed, when you set your levies, and then you have to come down, but we don't send well, I shouldn't say we. The treasurer auditor doesn't send out the final statement until the end of March or thereabout. And then we have our appeals process, which is in April.
well, I would just point out that in the last 2 years, last year we levied, as a county, we levied 0, and this year we levied 2, which I would guess is probably unprecedented in the county and would probably not be matched by any county in Minnesota. I would make that,
It'd be hard for us to find.
yeah. So to state that the taxes have, we levied initially 6.9, so to go from 6.9 to 2 is going to make an impact. Secondly, Cindy and I and Jeff met with Teresa met with the La Crescent, not the council, but the mayor, the city administrator, the city finance person, and I thought we quite thoroughly explained. Then when I heard that some rumors that this was going to be presented, I again met with the city administrator and the finance director, and I again said there's an article with a thorough explanation in the papers, discussed a couple of specific issues, and said, do you find it necessary for me to come to the council meeting and address this? No, I don't think so. Well, then this follows, and it seems very accusatory, and I guess I'm not real happy about it. We explained, at least I thought we did,
Yes.
to city residents and the council regarding the increase in market values. And there isn't one brush for everybody. Those that I've met with individually, that I have come down here with them to meet with Cindy, I thought, again, we're at a point where if I were to say, that's a nice TV, some of these people would say, that's not a TV. I mean, there's not going to be a satisfactory answer for some people unless they say, oh yeah, we'll just arbitrarily lower your taxes. That's not the way the system works or the state's system is set up. A couple of a recent example is on Shore Acres Road, had a person get a increase, and unfortunately some of these increases happened in 1 year that would have been nice if they could have been incremental. That's not, again, how we can do it. But a vacant lot sold for $300,000 a couple of weeks ago. A house valued at $350,000 would indicate then, if the person doesn't agree, that the house is worth $50,000. I don't think so. And again, when you start comparing parcels, there's more involved, but the point being that some of these sales in the La Crescent area have been extremely high. One house on Shore Acres a couple years ago sold for 1.3 million. So when you factor that in, if you're the neighbor, you gotta assume that maybe somebody pay a little more for your house if the one next door is sold for 1.3 million. So anyway, enough of that preaching, but the property tax statements they're requesting be mailed in a timely fashion in accordance with any laws regarding their distribution, so that property owners receive the statement in a timely fashion in advance of the required budget levy public meeting. This sounds like they're talking about the truth in taxation. That's not, I mean, we should do that, and I don't know why this year there was some delay in it going out.
Explain that a
Well,
little bit.
I don't set those times, that's an auditor treasurer thing.
But we,
We get our values to them as fast as we can, and they get their tax papers out as fast as they can. And whether, you know, we're supposed to leave a 10-day window between, but, you know,
Okay, but my point, and we should make every effort to do that.
we do.
Yep.
Okay. However, this isn't the important meeting to the disgruntled
No,
taxpayer, because
There's
that's
actually a
April.
budget meeting.
April is when you make those,
that's when we determine the value.
yeah,
last
and that's
time.
where you come in if you're disputing it. The truth in taxation, I'm sure many of those people didn't particularly care what we were budgeting for this department, that department, so on. They were concerned about what their tax and value was. Wrong meeting.
Yes.
We'll do everything we can. I mean, again, I hate to be cold about it, but you got it in the mail. You didn't read it. You know, sorry about that, but we've bent over backwards to try to give them, what can you do now? We've suggested tax rebate, we've suggested tax court, we've suggested having a visit and be reevaluated for the following tax year. So again, I don't think we've been neglectful at all in trying to address some of these concerns. That the city and county not schedule their budget levy public meetings at the same time as was the case this year. Again, I don't know the mechanism, but my thought is that if the county sets theirs, I would think Caledonia and La Crescent would ask what ours was. If the federal government sets a date for something, they don't call Minnesota and say, is that okay?
That's something I can't answer any of that because that's
Jack,
That's something we made here, and we will work to
Yeah.
make sure that doesn't happen again.
And that's something that we could coordinate.
That's an easy
and-
fix.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think just as at
Guy-
prior meetings, publicize it, mention
Yeah.
it at the meeting, every couple of weeks before it happens, 3 weeks, a month, whatever.
I was at a meeting yesterday afternoon where this came up, and the statute was looked up by an individual at the meeting, and the statute says basically that the county auditor treasurer is not required to attempt to coordinate those TNT meetings with anybody else. There is not a requirement. If those entities want to get on the telephone and do a little work on it before those dates are set, fine. The requirement is not there.
Good, thank you, Fred.
Well, that's something I will work to try and schedule with them.
Yeah.
This year,
Sure.
when this meeting, I think it was my second meeting here that we scheduled and appointed it, and it was decided with good intent to move usually the meeting happened in December. It was decided to move it into November to give folks more time to
Yeah.
separate it out. So.
Well, the previous year, while we had it a little bit too late
Right.
to make sense operationally, and so it was changed.
And the meeting is for budget review and levy, not
Yep.
tax questions.
Right.
Assessment questions.
Okay, the Houston County, that they are requesting that Houston County notify the city when the county undertakes to convert commercial and apartment properties to the new system so that the city can try and it should be again, try to take a proactive approach to the situation. Cindy, again, you said you were going to review all of that prior to implementation.
My intent, is to, before we put anything more onto the new system and enact it, is to go over it more thoroughly. A little history. My office, before I was appointed, was informed that we would be using the new system. Was that in 2016, Carol? It was not brought to my attention until later in 17, after I had been appointed, that we had to start rolling these values over. We were under an extreme timeline and extremely short on people. So we did not get the benefit of being able to thoroughly look at that. That is not something that I ever intend to have happen again. And I don't think that, to say that we would notify them is a pretty big stretch, because we don't know exactly when that's going to happen, and we don't know who will still be here to notify them in the time. Yeah, it'd be nice to make sure that everything goes great, and that is what we were looking for, but I don't know that I would put a stamp on being able to notify them.
Okay. And lastly, requesting that Houston County prepare for the 2019 Board of Appeal process and meeting, as we expect that the meeting has the potential to be both lengthy and contentious. Okay, fine. We'll take your advice.
What I'll say to that is, when I went back to my office, we're still getting phone calls of people who are debating whether it's their value or their taxes. And what we're saying to them all is we're giving them the options, and if they move up their taxes this year, pay them and go for the refund or go for your state. You sue the state for it. Or we are also saying we have a list of people that we want to review. We are telling them that we're not reviewing anybody until we finish our work for this year. So February and March, we'll be going to that list. Hopefully we'll get through it. The sooner we can get to it, the sooner we can get through it. Other than that, go to the appeals, but we'd like to have a lot of that. We'd like to be able to look at all of those houses before we go to the appeals, so that we know what we're looking at and they know what we're looking at. And we can alleviate a lot of that before we get to the appeals if we go and look at it.
Good.
A lot of them have had depreciation over the years, which artificially lowered them, and now they're being brought back up to equalization. A lot of them have not let assessors into their homes prior. And a law with the state of Minnesota is if you have not allowed the assessor into your home, you cannot appeal. We do not appeal it until we are allowed in. So
Okay.
there's a lot to it. It's not just come to the meeting and yell.
Okay. And I'd like to make clear, that since I represent the La Crescent City, that I'm not looking for an adversarial relationship with the city. If they think that I'm looking to raise people's taxes, they haven't been watching the website or any of the meetings. That is not my approach. I would love to lower everybody's taxes if that was feasible. I appreciate their concern. I will talk to them again, but I think again that we've been responsive, and there are just certain things that we don't have control over, and we're not going to be able to wrestle control over some of these issues. The sales are what they are, and that has a huge effect on somebody else's values. So
It does, and I'd like to make, we get told so many times that we raise the values because we need more money. And I'd like to make it clear that the levies set the money that's needed.
Right,
And the values are separate.
yeah.
And then the auditor's job is to determine what value, what taxes go to what party, what property. It is not, we do not raise values so that we can get money.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all
I just want to comment as a newcomer coming in on this. I can understand their frustration because it is confusing. Being on the township, we've gone through these meetings in April, and Cindy or whoever came and explained it, and it's confusing. I think a lot of this stems from the fact that people's properties doubled or increased significantly overnight, and that's upsetting, and I can sympathize with that,
I
those
can too.
folks. So I think our best approach is try to be understanding and not to be too defensive, and try to help people go through this change, and hopefully in time we can get this straightened out and be on a even playing field for everybody. So
I agree with that. That is probably one of our most important things that our assessors do is go out there, you do not take it personal. You try to educate and you try to keep on track. And I've got a very good team that's working and we've got a very good program. It's just gonna take a couple of years to correct everything that's been going on for the past.
And I think the education is the big thing, educating people. And it seems like when we do get a complaint, and I think, Jack, you and I figured out maybe 2% are complaining out of the 20,000 parcels. But even so, once that it is explained to them, it's based on sales, it's based on, you know, all these different factors, people tend to be understanding at that point. And I've been on town board for 20 years, and also those those meetings where nobody comes to.
not really. But,
You know, but if they did, if they read it right on their tax bill as the date of your
well,
hearing.
I think we've got their attention now, so that'll probably change.
But that's their time to come.
Yeah,
And-
I'm sure it will.
And another thing I learned with all these meetings we've been having with Cindy and stuff is the town boards need to know they should not adjourn their meeting until
Yeah.
the issue is dealt with.
Right.
And we never knew that years ago.
I didn't
I
know
mean,
that
at the end
either,
of the
yeah.
meeting, we just would adjourn for the evening, and you really should not adjourn it. You should continue it.
But-
And we gotta let the townships know that too.
Right.
And one thing to add to what you're saying, theoretically, you could double all of the values across the board and keep your levy the same across the board, and your taxes would not change.
Now that's confusing to me. I don't.
Because
That
you
that
still
don't
have the
make no
same
sense
piece
at
of
all.
pie. You still have the same piece of pie overall.
Yeah.
It's just the pie grew and your portion grew, but your percentage of what you have to pay has not changed. And that, once you get that,
We have to cover that
Yes.
amount of money that the levy is requesting
You have-
regardless
You have
of,
to generate the revenue for that levy.
so if you doubled everything, you'd still have the same percentage of the capacity, tax capacity. Or if you halved it all, you'd still have the same, theoretically. Of course, there are other issues that come into play.
Yeah.
this is beginning to get like my cell phone now, so.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
But I
gotta
hope
stop while we're
you
ahead.
you can get to those properties in February that
We're
you're.
trying
Yeah,
hard.
that'd be good so you can get on that and reevaluate some of that stuff. So
We are mandated to do so many things between now and then that, and with the new staff, it's difficult.
Yeah.
We're trying very hard, and that is our goal.
Right.
Thanks, Cindy.
I
Teresa.
wanna- oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
I've got
I
one
was-
more thing I gotta get
Okay,
in. but,
this
yeah.
is not on the agenda yet this week, but are we thinking of a policy, a strategic planning meeting for next Tuesday?
Yes,
Okay, just so that the notice is out.
yes.
So next Tuesday, we'll meet at 9:30 in a conference room?
Yes, 9:30, and I'll make sure the conference room is
Okay.
available and confirm which conference room and let you know. And I'll publish an agenda. I think the focus for next week will be on, I've got some draft board policies
Yeah.
to update, and then possibly into some of the finance, but we'll start with the board policies and see how far we get there.
Sounds good. Okay, Fred wanted to say one more?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a few sentences, so if you want to be bored, why start being bored? I'd like to take just a little bit of a look back at this last year, and then try to take a little bit of a look ahead too. If I were going to categorize this last year in one word in county government, it would be change. We've had several key retirements, and we have managed throughout that to restructure things a little bit within county government to hopefully gain some efficiencies, and I think we have. We've had a complete change in structure in county government with the administrator, and I really think that that's going to result in some, first of all, result in the board being able to do more of what it's really supposed to do, that is overall management, and get out of some of the detail kinds of things that we've been in. I know the devil is in the details, and you do have to pay attention to the details. But there are some instances that I'll get to in a minute or two, hopefully less than two, where the details have really kind of screwed up what we really should have been doing. We spend time with those details, and we don't get time to work on some of the projects that really need some time from this board. The restructuring of the meeting schedule, I think, is really going to help that too. The things that really impress me around here are things go wrong. People make mistakes. There is very, very little, most of the time, of going back and playing the blame game. Very little of that. People are much, much better about, okay, let's straighten it out, let's get it right this time, and let's move on. That's really helpful, and it projects a very, very good image to the public when we do that, and we do it most of the time, and I'm very glad we do. Now, goals. One of the things that I ran on when I ran for this job was, we need to get that highway department building situation resolved. Well, where are we? We're really not a whole lot further now than we were 2 years ago. I'm extremely frustrated with that.
Or 8 years ago.
Well, okay, go back a little bit. The first time that the Highway Department building project came up for discussion at this board, I don't even think that the board was meeting here. I think it was meeting downstairs, because if I remember the month right, it was October. I know I remember the year right. It was 1993. Okay? It's one of those things where details get in the way. There are some details with that project itself that got in the way 3 specific times this last year, where details with that project got in the way, and they had to be solved before we could move on. And then the next detail comes in, and okay, you know the drill. And hopefully, we will be able to focus with a change in government structure. We will be able to focus more on those kinds of things, and that specifically, better than we have done over the last year or two. The other thing, the other big project that we need desperately to spend more time on is what do we do with that building across the courtyard over there toward that service station, the historic jail building. And that's another one of those things where the people that need, the people within the courthouse, the employees that need to spend time on that, gathering background information and doing the work that's necessary to give us the background that we need to make those decisions, get so confounded tied up in detail stuff that it just has to go to the back burner. And part of that is related to what I talked about first, was the change. It takes time when people have to deal with retirements and filling positions and changing job descriptions and changing structures and whatnot. Hey, that takes time. Takes a lot of time. So, okay, hopefully we're through some of that. Hopefully we can make some more progress on that. The work group sessions, the alternate week meetings, I'm sure are going to help a great deal in that. Now, if I were going to give us a grade, what would I do? Well, on dealing with change, I'd have to give us a pretty good solid B, really. I think we've done really well with that. On dealing with long-term goals, I don't think I'd rate us quite so high. I wouldn't give us as low a rating as I would give the federal or the state government on those areas, but I still wouldn't rate us all that high. Hopefully, with a change in structure, we can do a whole lot better for the taxpayers in that respect. The one thing that really sticks in my craw yet, and it's not our fault, really, is the situation with the License Bureau. And the state still does not have their act together on that one. They still don't have the concept of get some programmers in there, or just copy a program from some other state. Pay them a couple of $1 million if you have to, but just copy a program from some other state that works, and just don't try to reinvent the wheel with people that aren't very good at things that rotate.
Fred,
But
Fred, what are you expecting for 140 million?
but in any event, it's really been a good year in a lot of respects, and we have some work to do yet, and we're going to be working on it.
Thank you.
That's end of my comment. That was more than a minute or two.
Yeah, I
I'm
think it
sorry.
was.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'd just like to add too that I agree with Fred on the highway department part of it, the shop. I think that should be one of our top goals this year, is trying to get that going. We've kicked the can down the road long enough, and each year the cost of doing a project like that keeps going up. So,
Exactly right.
given that fact, we might have to try to find a scaled back version to do it in phases or whatever, but I think that's something we need to work on now that we have Jeff here to run the day-to-day, and we can focus more on that stuff, so.
Okay. Anybody else need to take a minute? I won't. Okay, we are now at closing public comment. If anybody would like to bring anything up to the board,
Good morning, Commissioners.
come right up.
You want to come to the
Then-
microphone?
Then we can hear you better.
Okay. Jim Rozovitz, I live in Crescent Township. And it was my understanding that as of the end of last year, there were 2 Plan Commission seats open. And I guess my first question is, have those seats been filled?
They were filled last month, right? Yep.
So they were filled by the previous board. Back in November, the county was soliciting applications for consideration to join the Plan Commission or for appointment to the Plan Commission. I was one of those applicants, submitted that application in November as required. Haven't heard anything since. And so my question is, how did this, and when did this take place? Because there was a process that appeared on the county website that said that the applications would go first to the county board, then it would go to a selection committee that was comprised of a member of the board, the planning and zoning administrator, the environmental services director, and another plan commission member. They would then interview applicants and then would go back to the full board for the board to make the decision. I went over the board meetings minutes from last month. This had to occur in December, and I can't find anything unless I missed it that indicated how and when this was done. I understand it's the prerogative of the board to appoint anyone whom they wish to the Plan Commission using whatever criteria they feel is important, but there was a request for applications, there was a process outlined, and I'm a little surprised to hear that those positions have already been filled, and a little disappointed that if they were, that those of us who did submit applications were never given any sort of response. Thank you for submitting, we've made another decision, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. You did
So-
contact me about that. The policy that you just brought up of how we do that, that's for the Board of Adjustment. Is when we do interviews and have a committee moving forward. But for the Planning Commission, we have the policy, I believe states, is that correct, Jeff? It goes to the board members, they pick the top.
Yeah, the board members vote,
Right.
were selected independently, consolidated, and then made the appointments.
Right.
And the appointments were made on the 26th December meeting, I believe. I have to double check in the
But
minutes.
the one with the interviews is. the-
And I apologize that we as a staff did not get back to the other applicants with that over the holidays, and so.
I don't
There
understand.
should have been a response back to you
So
with that letter.
Those
Yep.
who were appointed to the board filled out the applications and went through a process. Teresa, you're saying that process didn't apply to the Plan Commission
Right,
appointments?
that process that you mentioned where we interview people, we choose and then we call people in, that's for the Board of Adjustment. The Planning Commission, we all get a copy of everybody's application. Each one individually sends in their choices, top 2 choices, and then it's compiled, and that's Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Now,
you
one
should have
thing-
been notified, yes.
One thing that you need to note is that dependent on the results of an election in February, there might come up another vacancy on the Planning Commission,
Which would be advertised.
which would be advertised. We would go through the same process again.
But we try to keep it spread out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Through the county.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have.
Oh,
Yvonne Krogstad.
There you
Yvonne
go.
Krogstad. I also was one of the applicants for the Planning Commission, as I had been a few years ago. You are wrong, Teresa. We had interviews for the planning commission position also with a panel.
In the
So
past.
it was both Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission that those provisions apply.
I think we do have I didn't bring my copy of my policy, but I do have a copy
Right,
of what I
but
just stated.
as
I don't
former
know why we,
as the former speaker said, there should have been either interviews or something in the process. The process was not completed. You took the applications and it was determined to just keep the former
Just kept the
commission members on.
I'm looking for a copy of it.
That
and I've
that policy was changed. That's the part that got missed in here somehow. You're correct that at one time the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission openings policy, whatever, for lack of a better word at this point, was at one time the same. But that was changed, and I don't remember when.
I think it was
But-
January of 2006.
I know that I was involved in changing that because, and the change was made simply because we felt that at that point that the process of the interviewing and all this sort of thing was just more cumbersome than we felt was necessary for that particular type of situation. And so it was simplified, and it was simplified to what we have now. And that's the Board of Adjustment. We left where it was because we felt that that is a situation where we do need to be, as a board, extremely careful about the appointments to that board, because we do not review their decisions.
Their decisions are final.
We review the decisions of the Planning Commission. The Board of Adjustment decisions we don't review. The only thing that we have as a board, as far as any kind of input on the Board of Adjustment, is if someone is simply consistently way off base on a lot of things, we can remove them from the position. I don't
So-
think that's ever been done. It probably never will be. It won't be necessary.
So
But
now-
we
so-
don't have,
I do
that's
have
all we've
copies
got.
of that
So,
policy at home and my
that's why.
policy.
So now I'm confused. Why
Oh,
were
good.
why were there applications requested then if you were simply going to reappoint the present commission members?
The goal was not to reappoint the present commission members. We went through all of the written documentation from all of the applicants. We individually rank ordered those applications and sent them back to the administrator, and then he compiled that rank order. And the way that that rank order, the compilation of that rank order came out with the two people who are currently there as, and who wish to re-up as our top candidates. And so
Okay,
that's
now-
the way we
now-
did it.
Now that makes sense to me, but it made no sense whatsoever because I didn't get a letter saying, sorry, but the board determined otherwise, whatever. So the process should have been explained in a letter to the applicants, I think.
That will be remedied.
I will correct that, and the applicants will get a letter shortly.
Thank you for your input, both of you. Thank you, because the ball got dropped there, and you're allowing us to pick it up and go forward in a corrected fashion. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to approach the board? Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.